Number. I had finally found peace. After years of struggling to build my own life away from the constant comparisons to my older brother Jackson, I was thriving. My tech company had sold for millions. I had a beautiful home in San Francisco and a loving relationship with Sophie. Then came that phone call. My mother, who had not spoken to me in 5 years, suddenly wanted to reconnect. The reason Jackson had hired a private investigator who discovered I was wealthy. Now my entire family was back with their hands outstretched. If you are watching this, let me know where you are tuning in from. Hit that like and subscribe button, and prepare for a wild ride. I grew up in a modest middle-class neighborhood in Boston. Our house was comfortable but nothing extravagant, a 4-bedroom colonial with a small backyard where my father Thomas would grill during summer weekends. My parents were both educators. Dad taught high school history, and Mom was an elementary school English teacher. They were respectable members of the community known for their dedication to education and family values. At least that was the image they portrayed. From my earliest memories, it was clear that my brother Jackson held a special place in our family. 5 years, my senior Jackson seemed to excel at everything without effort. He was the star quarterback on his high school football team, maintained a perfect GPA, and had the kind of natural charisma that drew people to him. Our parents never tried to hide their favoritism. Jackson was their golden child, their pride and joy. Alonzo, why can you not be more like your brother? Became the soundtrack of my childhood. Where Jackson was athletic and outgoing, I was more reserved and analytical. I discovered my passion for computers when I was 8 years old after a neighbor gave us their old desktop. While other kids played sports, I taught myself programming languages and spent hours creating simple games and applications. My parents viewed my interest in technology as a waste of time. You will ruin your eyes sitting in front of that screen all day. My mother would say, pulling me away from coding projects to attend yet another of Jackson's sporting events. My father was more direct. Computers are for people who cannot make it in the real world. The contrast in how they treated us was never more apparent than during our milestone celebrations. When Jackson graduated high school as valedictorian, my parents threw an elaborate party that cost thousands of dollars. They invited extended family, neighbors, and even some of Dad's colleagues. There was catered food, a professional photographer, and customized decorations celebrating Jackson's exceptional achievement. Just 2 months later, on my 16th birthday, my parents forgot entirely. They had taken Jackson shopping for college supplies and returned home late, surprised to find me sitting alone at the kitchen table with a small cupcake I had bought myself from the corner store. "Oh, is that today?" my mother had asked, barely glancing my way as she helped Jackson unpack his new laptop, the expensive kind I had been requesting for my programming projects. By the time I turned 18, the divide in our family had become a chasm. I had been quietly applying to colleges with strong computer science programs, and to my surprise received a substantial merit scholarship to a technology institute in California. When the acceptance letter arrived, I felt genuine excitement for the first time in years. This was my chance to forge my own path. My parents had other plans. They had always assumed I would follow Jackson's footsteps to the prestigious law school he attended. When I showed them my scholarship letter, their reaction was immediate disappointment. "We did not raise you to waste your potential playing with computers," my father said, his voice cold. "Law is a respectable profession. This tech nonsense is just a fad." My mother nodded in agreement. "We have already spoken with Jackson professors. They can help get you admitted despite your less impressive achievements." That night, the tension that had been building for years finally exploded into a massive argument. I insisted on following my passion for technology. My parents threatened to withhold any financial support if I did not choose law school. "You are throwing away a real future," my father shouted. "No son of mine is going to become some basement-dwelling computer geek Jackson home for the weekend." Sided with our parents as usual. "Stop being so selfish and ungrateful," he told me. "Mom and Dad know what is best for you. They just want you to have a stable career like mine." That was the moment I realized nothing I ever did would be good enough unless it mirrored Jackson's path. The decision crystallized in my mind with surprising clarity. I needed to leave. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I packed 2 suitcases with essential belongings. I took my laptop, a few cherished books, and the $500 I had saved from my part-time job at the local electronics store. I wrote a brief note explaining that I needed to find my own way and slipped out before dawn. The pain of that night still lingers when I allow myself to remember it. Not a single person in my family tried to understand my dreams. Not one of them fought for my right to choose my own path. Instead, they tried to force me into a mold that was never designed for me. My first years of independence were brutal. I arrived in San Francisco with barely enough money to last a month. After 3 days in a hostel, I found the cheapest apartment share I could, a two-bedroom unit that housed 4 people. My space consisted of a twin mattress in the corner of the living room, separated from my roommates by a hanging sheet for privacy. I found work wherever I could. Mornings at a coffee shop near campus, afternoons as a teaching assistant in basic programming classes, and weekends doing tech support for small businesses. Between shifts, I attended classes, often running on just a few hours of sleep. Those early days taught me resilience. I learned to stretch $20 for a week of groceries to find free Wi-Fi spots where I could work on projects and to fix electronics others had discarded as broken. Every challenge became a problem to solve, just like the coding puzzles I loved. During those first 2 years, I still tried to maintain contact with my family. I would call home once a month, usually reaching my mother, who would give short, disinterested responses to my updates. She never asked about my classes or how I was managing financially. Instead, she filled the conversation with stories about Jackson's latest achievements, his internship at a prestigious law firm, the expensive apartment our parents helped him furnish, the European vacation they took together. Each call left me feeling more invisible than the last. Eventually, the conversations grew shorter, the responses colder, until one day my mother did not pick up at all. I tried again the following week and the week after that. When I finally reached her, she sounded annoyed. "We are busy preparing for Jackson's engagement party," she said. "Can we talk another time?" That was the last meaningful conversation we had. After that, my calls went straight to voicemail. Holiday cards I sent came back unopened. I was effectively erased from the family narrative. The loneliness of those years was almost unbearable at times. I spent my 21st birthday alone at my desk, working through the night on a project due the next day. When Thanksgiving and Christmas came around, I volunteered for extra shifts since I had nowhere else to go. While social media showed images of my family celebrating together, I ate microwave dinners in my tiny shared space. But beneath the hardship, something was taking root. My programming skills were improving rapidly. Professors began to take notice of my work, offering research opportunities. A small local tech blog published an article about an application I had developed to help small businesses protect their customer data. Despite being cast out by my family, I was slowly building something of value. I was becoming someone who did not need their validation to succeed. This realization did not erase the pain, but it gave me purpose beyond it. The real turning point in my career came during my final year of university. For my senior project, I had developed a more sophisticated version of my data security application, one that could detect and prevent multiple types of breaches simultaneously. My professor was impressed enough to enter it in a regional hackathon sponsored by several major tech companies. I never expected to win, but I hoped the exposure might lead to job offers. What happened instead changed the trajectory of my life entirely. During the demonstration phase, a man named Gabriel Montez approached my booth. Unlike the other judges who spent just minutes reviewing each project, Gabriel stayed for nearly an hour, asking detailed questions about my code architecture and security protocols. I later learned he was not an official judge at all, but a venture capitalist who specialized in cybersecurity investments. "This is extraordinary work," he told me as the event wound down, especially coming from someone so young. "Would you be willing to discuss this over dinner?" That dinner conversation extended late into the night as Gabriel outlined a vision much bigger than the job offers I had been hoping for. He wanted to invest $250, 0 inches my application, to transform it into a full security platform for businesses. "I believe this could revolutionize how small to medium companies handle their security needs," he explained. "They cannot afford enterprise solutions, but your approach makes robust protection accessible and affordable." I was stunned. The amount he offered was more money than I had ever imagined having, but more valuable than the investment was his mentorship. Gabriel became not just a business partner, but the first person who truly believed in my potential. We founded SecureLink the week after I graduated. For the next 3 years, I worked 18-hour days refining the platform, adding features, and building our client base. What began as a two-person operation in a tiny office grew to a team of 15 talented developers and security specialists. Our breakthrough came when a mid-sized financial technology company implemented our system and subsequently prevented what could have been a devastating data breach. The story made industry news, and suddenly we were fielding calls from companies across the country. By year 3, we had multiple acquisition offers. Gabriel and I carefully evaluated each one, eventually accepting a deal from a major tech corporation for $45 million. My share after investor payouts and employee bonuses came to just over $30 million. At 28 years old, I had become wealthy beyond anything I could have imagined when I left Boston with $500 in my pocket. The money changed my circumstances, but not my approach to life. I purchased a modest house in a quiet San Francisco suburb, nothing flashy or extravagant. I invested most of the proceeds conservatively, living off a small percentage while supporting causes that mattered to me. Financial security gave me the freedom to build the life I wanted, rather than the one others had tried to force upon me. It was during this period of stability that I met Sophie. Unlike the few people I had dated before who seemed fascinated by my success, Sophie was refreshingly unimpressed by my financial status. As a pediatrician at a community clinic, she had her own passion and purpose. We connected over shared values rather than material things. Money just gives you options, she told me on our third date. What matters is what you choose to do with those options. What I chose to do was establish a technology scholarship fund for underprivileged students interested in computer science. Every year, I would personally visit rural and inner-city schools to talk about careers in technology. Seeing the excitement in those young eyes when they realized someone believed in their potential reminded me of what I had needed most as a teenager. With Sophie by my side, I finally felt I had created a full and meaningful life. We enjoyed simple pleasures, cooking together, hiking on weekends, building a community of genuine friends. For the first time, I felt truly accepted for who I was. Yet beneath this contentment, there remained an unhealed wound. I never spoke about my family to Sophie, but she sensed the gap in my life story. Occasionally, I would find myself scrolling through their social media profiles late at night. Jackson had become a partner at his law firm. My parents retired comfortably and traveled frequently. Their posts were filled with family gatherings. I was never invited to milestones I was not allowed to witness. "Have you ever thought about reaching out?" Sophie asked gently, after catching me looking at these photos one evening. I closed the laptop quickly. They made their choice a long time ago. People change, Alonzo. Maybe they regret what happened, but I was not ready to risk rejection again. The thought of extending an olive branch only to have it slapped away was too painful to contemplate. So I continued building my life without them trying to ignore the occasional dreams where we sat around a dinner table as a complete family, everyone genuinely happy to be together. The call came on a Saturday evening. Sophie and I were preparing dinner in our kitchen, music playing softly in the background, wine glasses half full on the counter. A perfect, ordinary moment in our comfortable life together. When my phone rang with a Boston area code, my first instinct was to ignore it. Probably just another business solicitation, but something made me answer. The voice on the other end nearly caused me to drop the phone. "Alonzo, is that you, sweetie?" My mother Elizabeth sounded exactly as I remembered, though perhaps a bit older. There was a forced sweetness in her tone that immediately put me on guard. "Mom," I managed to say, signaling to Sophie, who had frozen in surprise. "How did you get this number?" "Oh, you know we have our ways," she replied with a nervous laugh. "It has been far too long since we talked. Your father and I were just saying how much we miss you." My mind raced. 5 years of complete silence, and now suddenly they missed me. Something did not add up. "That is interesting," I replied carefully, "considering you have not returned any of my calls or messages for years." There was a pause, then she cleared her throat. "Well, we have all made mistakes, have we not? Family should stick together no matter what." As she spoke, I could hear the practiced nature of her words, as if she were reading from a script. Then came the real reason for the call. Your brother Jackson has been keeping an eye on you, you know. He is so proud of what you have accomplished with that computer work of yours. Jackson has been keeping an eye on me, I repeated, feeling a cold knot form in my stomach. Well, yes, she continued, growing more animated. He was curious about how you were doing, so he hired someone to check up on you. A private investigator or something like that. And, my goodness, we had no idea you had done so well for yourself. Jackson says you sold your company for millions. We are just so proud. The truth hit me like a physical blow. They had not called because they missed me or regretted their treatment. They had called because they had discovered I had money. The nausea rising in my throat was immediate and overwhelming. I see was all I could manage to say. We would love to reconnect, Alonzo. Your father and I have been thinking it is time to bring the family back together. Jackson is doing wonderfully too, of course. He just made partner at his firm. I gripped the counter to steady myself as Sophie watched with concern in her eyes. The conversation continued for a few more minutes, with my mother dropping hints about family obligations and the importance of supporting each other. When she finally hung up, I set the phone down as if it were contaminated. They found out I have money, I told Sophie flatly. That is the only reason they want to talk after all these years. Sophie wrapped her arms around me. You do not know that for sure. Maybe they genuinely want to reconnect. But the sick feeling in my gut told me otherwise. The timing was too convenient. The sudden interest, too transparent. Still, part of me, the part that had never stopped wanting their approval, wondered if I was being too harsh. Maybe I should at least hear them out, I said reluctantly. One dinner, just to see what they really want. Sophie squeezed my hand. Whatever you decide, I am with you. After several days of consideration, I agreed to meet my family at an upscale restaurant in San Francisco. They would fly out the following weekend. I made reservations at one of the most expensive establishments in the city, partly out of spite, partly to see how they would react. When the day arrived, I felt physically ill with anxiety. Sophie offered to come along, but I asked her to wait at home. This was something I needed to face alone first. I arrived early and watched them enter the restaurant. My father, Thomas, looked older, his once dark hair now completely gray. My mother had aged well, though I noticed the designer handbag and jewelry she wore, items I knew were far beyond what a retired teacher could typically afford. And Jackson, still handsome and confident, though I detected a tightness around his eyes that had not been there before. Alonzo. My mother embraced me with theatrical enthusiasm. My father offered a stiff handshake. Jackson clapped me on the shoulder like we were old friends rather than estranged brothers. Throughout the appetizers, they lavished me with exaggerated praise. Every aspect of my life suddenly fascinated them. My work, my home, even my choice of wine. My mother repeatedly mentioned how they had always believed in me, a revision of history so blatant it was almost comical. Jackson dominated much of the conversation, talking about his cases and connections. But I noticed discrepancies in his stories, references to financial pressure complaints about the cost of living in Boston, mentions of temporary cash flow issues. He was setting the stage, and I could see exactly where this was heading. Finally, over dessert, my mother broached the real purpose of their visit. Your brother has such an amazing opportunity right now. She began, placing her hand on Jackson's arm, a chance to invest in a development project that could really establish his name outside the firm. Is that so? I replied neutrally. Yes, my father jumped in. The returns would be substantial, but it requires a significant initial investment. And let me guess, I said, setting down my fork. You thought I might be interested in providing that investment. They exchanged glances before my mother continued with a bright smile. Well, we thought it might be nice for the brothers to work together on something. Family supporting family. Interesting, I replied. And does this have anything to do with the private investigator Jackson hired to look into my finances? The table went silent. Jackson's face flushed red while my father cleared his throat uncomfortably. I do not know what you are talking about, Jackson finally said, but his eyes shifted away from mine. I think you do. I leaned forward. So let me ask directly. Why are you really here? After 5 years of no contact, why the sudden interest in reuniting? The facade cracked. Jackson slammed his hand on the table, causing the glasses to jump. Fine. You want the truth, I am in trouble. I invested in a property development that went south. I owe $1.2 million to some very serious people. And what does that have to do with me? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Mom and Dad mortgaged their house to help me, but it is not enough, he admitted. We saw that you sold your company for millions. You could clear this debt without even feeling it. My father leaned forward. It is your responsibility as part of this family. We raised you, we gave you everything. I sat back, a strange calm washing over me as the final pieces clicked into place. So let me get this straight. You ignored me for years. You never supported my dreams. You cut me off completely. And now that Jackson has messed up, you expect me to hand over $1 million. We are your family, my mother insisted, tears forming in her eyes. Family helps each other. Where was that family spirit when I was sleeping on a mattress on the floor working 3 jobs to pay for school? I asked quietly. Where was it when I called home for birthdays and holidays only to be ignored? The hurt and anger I had suppressed for years was finally finding its voice. And in that moment of clarity, I realized I was no longer the desperate young man seeking their approval. I was someone who had built a life without them, a good life filled with purpose and genuine connections. I am not your ATM, I stated calmly, looking each of them in the eye. And my success is not a resource for you to exploit when convenient. Jackson's face darkened with anger. So that is it. You are just going to let us drown while you sit in your fancy house counting your millions. You hired a private investigator to dig into my life, I reminded him. You violated my privacy instead of simply calling to ask how I was doing. Did it ever occur to you to approach me as a brother rather than a potential bailout? My father interjected, his tone condescending as ever. You always were selfish, Alonzo. After everything we sacrificed for you. I had to laugh at that. What exactly did you sacrifice for me, Dad? The time you could have spent praising Jackson even more. You never came to a single one of my academic competitions. You called my passion a waste of time. You threatened to cut me off financially if I did not follow the career path you chose. My mother began to cry, the tears seemingly calculated to make me feel guilty. How can you be so cruel? We are about to lose our home. Because of choices Jackson made, I pointed out. Choices you supported and enabled just like always. Just then the restaurant door opened and Sophie walked in. She had texted earlier asking if I needed support, and I had finally replied yes. She sat down beside me, introducing herself with remarkable poise given the tension at the table. Alonzo has told me so much about you all, she said pleasantly, though we both knew that was not entirely true. Jackson sneered. And who exactly are you? I am a pediatrician, she replied simply, and someone who knows about the scholarship fund Alonzo established to help students pursue careers in technology. He helps dozens of young people every year follow their dreams, even though his own family never supported his. Their shocked expressions revealed how little they truly knew about me. They had created a narrative of me as nothing but a lucky tech millionaire, without any understanding of the person I had become. I took Sophie's hand and made my decision. I will not be paying off Jackson's debt. That is his responsibility. However, I am willing to help Mom and Dad keep their house. My offer came with conditions. Jackson would need to take financial responsibility for his own mistakes. I would pay for all of them to attend financial literacy courses. And any future relationship would depend on them respecting my boundaries. Jackson immediately rejected my offer. I do not need your charity or your lectures, he spat, standing up to leave. My parents exchanged uncertain glances. My father seemed ready to follow Jackson, but my mother hesitated. Think about it, I told them. My offer stands, but not indefinitely. We parted ways that night with nothing resolved. As Sophie and I drove home, I felt a strange mixture of sadness and relief. The fantasy of a happy family reunion had been shattered, but so had the power they held over me. In the months that followed, my life continued on its positive trajectory. Sophie and I got engaged during a quiet weekend trip to the coast. We began discussing starting a family of our own. My scholarship foundation expanded to include mentorship programs and coding camps for underserved communities. 6 months after our disastrous dinner, I received an unexpected email from my mother. Unlike her phone call, This message was stripped of pretense. She apologized for her role in our estrangement and for the transparent attempt to access my money. She had enrolled in the financial course I had suggested and was working to repair their finances without enabling Jackson further. "I cannot change the past," she wrote, "but I would like the chance to know the man you have become." My father remained distant, unable to overcome his pride. Jackson, last I heard, had taken a position at a smaller firm in another state, still refusing any contact that did not involve financial assistance. But my mother and I began a careful, tentative relationship. We started with occasional emails, then phone calls. She met Sophie during a brief visit to San Francisco. Small steps toward healing, though the wounds would always leave scars. The greatest gift from this painful experience was the clarity it brought to my life. I realized that family is not defined by DNA, but by genuine care and support. Sophie and our circle of loyal friends had become my true family. The scholarship recipients who sent me grateful emails were part of my extended family. We build our own connections based on mutual respect rather than obligation. I still think about Jackson, sometimes wondering if he will ever break free from the golden child narrative that ultimately trapped him. In some ways, my parents did him the greater disservice by never requiring him to face consequences or develop resilience. As Sophie and I prepare for our first child, I find myself reflecting on the lessons I want to pass on. That true success comes from following your authentic path. That financial wealth means nothing without emotional wealth. That setting healthy boundaries is an act of self-respect, not selfishness. I share this story because I know many of you have faced similar family dynamics. Sometimes the hardest thing is standing firm, when those who should support you unconditionally try to use you instead. But remember, true love empowers others to stand on their own, not become dependent on you. That is the freedom I finally found, and you can find it too. What boundaries have you had to set with family members? Has anyone experienced something similar with siblings or parents? Drop a comment below to share your story. If this resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more real-life experiences. And if you know someone struggling with family dynamics like these, share this video with them so they know they are not alone. Thank you for listening, and remember, your worth is not determined by those who failed to see your potential.